The rain came first, 3 days of it, grey and steady on the slate roofs of Eldon. Then the smell changed. Wood smoke, wet wool, boiled linen. It was the smell of a village trying to stay warm through a winter that had already taken 2 roofs and a barn. Edith Hale knew the smell better than anyone. She had lived inside it since she was a child. She was not the prettiest girl in Eldon, and she was not the poorest, though most days it was hard to tell the difference. She was the kind of woman a room forgot the moment she left it, quiet in a way that some mistook for meekness, and others, wiser, understood to be something closer to discipline. Her hands were red at the knuckles from lye and cold water. Her mother had been the village's healer before the fever took her, and she had left Edith 2 things, a chest of dried herbs and hands that did not shake. The bridge over the mill race had been rotting for a year. Everyone said so. Nobody fixed it. Edith crossed it twice a day, once with the wash and once without, and every time the middle board gave a little under her boot, she thought, "Someone is going to fall through that before spring." She did not know that the someone would be a child. She did not know that the falling would change everything. That morning she carried a basket toward the almshouse at the edge of the village, where the parish kept its orphans, its widows, its ruined men. She had bread in the basket, half a loaf, and she had not eaten since the day before. She told herself she was not hungry. She had told herself that so many times it had nearly become true. The almshouse matron met her at the door, sour as always, arms folded over her apron. "You've no business here, Edith Hale. I've bread. You've none to spare." "I've bread," Edith said again, and set it down, and that was the end of the argument, because the matron had learned there was no arguing with her when her voice went flat like that. She went in through the back, where the youngest were kept, and found Tam Ellery exactly where she always found him, in the corner by the cold hearth, knees drawn to his chest, coughing into a sleeve gone thin as paper. He was 7, or near it. No one was certain. He had been left at the gate 2 winters before with no name pinned to him, and the matron had given him one out of the parish register, the way she gave all of them names, the way a farmer names a stray dog he does not intend to keep. "You're blue," Edith said. "Not a question." "I'm cold," Tam said. "Everyone's cold. Not everyone's coughing like that." She knelt. She did not fuss over him the way some women fussed, all soft words and no use. She felt his forehead with the back of her wrist, the way her mother had taught her, and she did not like what she found there. She opened her basket and took out what she had brought besides the bread, a twist of dried coltsfoot, a strip of flannel she had cut from her own petticoat the night before, sitting up by a candle she could not afford to burn. She wrapped his chest. She steeped the coltsfoot in the almshouse's grudging kettle, and made him drink it, though he made a face at the taste. She did not ask the matron's leave. She did not ask for thanks. When the boy's coughing eased enough that his shoulders stopped shaking, she took the coat that hung on his hook, thin as the rest of him, and she sat by the window's poor light and mended the collar where it had torn through, using the only wool she had, a length of blue meant for nothing in particular, saved in her sewing box for a use that had never come. The stitches were not fine. She was tired, and her hands were cold, and the light was bad. But they held. "There," she said. "That'll keep the wind off your neck. You didn't have to." No, she agreed. I didn't. She left before he could thank her properly, because she did not like being thanked, had never liked it, found it embarrassing the way some women found flattery embarrassing. She told herself, walking back into the rain, that she had done nothing. Anyone would have done it. She believed that. She had always believed that, and it was, in its way, the truest thing about her. She did not see the man on the road. He stood beneath the dripping eave of the chandler's shop across the lane, waiting for his horse to be reshod, a plain wool coat over clothes too well cut to be plain at all, though no one in Eldon would have known to look twice. He had watched the whole of it through the almshouse window, the mended collar, the boiled coltsfoot, the refusal of thanks, and he had not moved the entire time, not to call out, not to offer help, not even to shift his weight from one boot to the other. He only watched. It was a habit of his, watching, and had been since long before this reign, since a woman with a prettier face than Edith Hale's had once, in front of him, called a crippled stable hand a filthy word, and laughed her bell of a laugh while doing it. He did not know Edith Hale's name yet. He would learn it before the week was out, and for reasons that had nothing to do with kindness, and everything to do with an heir he did not yet have, and a marriage he had sworn he would never again make for love. She did not know, walking home in the rain with an empty basket, that the man who had watched her mend a stranger's coat was the Duke of Wexford. She did not know that he had already, in his own quiet and arrogant way, decided something about her that no amount of poverty would unmake. 3 days later a letter came to the cottage where Edith lived alone, sealed in wax the colour of dried blood, addressed in a hand too fine for anyone she knew. She turned it over twice before she opened it, because letters did not come to her, not ever. Not since her mother died, and there was no one left in the county who wrote. It asked her to attend at Wexford Hall. It did not say why. She went because there was nothing else to do, with a summons from a duke, and because the coin she had left would not carry her through February. She walked the 4 miles in her one good dress, the hem already grey with road dust by the time the gates came into view, black iron between stone pillars, and she stood a long moment before she made herself walk through them. She was shown into a study that smelled of leather and old paper, and, faintly, of horse. A man stood at the window with his back to her, tall, dark-haired, his hands clasped behind him the way men clasp their hands when they mean to say something unpleasant, and want a moment first to arrange it. "Miss Hale," he said without turning. "Your Grace." "Sit." She did not sit. He turned then, and she understood in the space of that turning why the whole county spoke of him the way they did, in low voices, half fear and half something else. He was not handsome in the way songs described handsome. His nose had been broken once, and set imperfectly. His eyes were a dark, tired brown, the colour of strong tea, and they moved over her the way a man's eyes move over a horse he is thinking of buying, careful, assessing, giving nothing away. "I have a proposal," he said. "You will hear the whole of it before you answer, and you will not answer today." "Your Grace, I don't you will hear the whole of it," he said again. And something in his voice made her close her mouth. He told her plainly, without softening a single word of it, that he required an heir, that he had been betrothed once, years before, to a woman of good name and cold heart, and that the match had ended the day he watched her strike a stable hand across the face for the crime of being slow with her mount, and laugh while she did it, that he had sworn after that he would never again marry for anything so unreliable as love, which could turn, he said, the way milk turns, without warning and without cause. "I am offering a contract," he said. "Marriage in name, a child, when one comes. A settlement for you, generous, and freedom after, should you wish it, with provision enough that you need never again mend another woman's linen for coin. Edith stood very still. "You're offering to buy me," she said. "I am offering you a bargain. There is a difference. Is there?" "You may refuse it," he said. "Most women would not call that a kindness. I assure you it is the only kindness I have to give." She thought of the empty coal bin at home. She thought of the winter coming, and the one after that, and the slow grinding math of a life spent counting shillings that never quite added to enough. She thought, though she did not say it aloud, of Tam Ellery's cough, and how there would be others like him every winter until she died, and how a settlement, generous, might mean she could do more than mend a collar with the only wool she had. "Why me?" she said. "There are women with better names. Women who'd take your bargain gladly and never ask a question." He did not answer that honestly. Not yet. "You have a reputation for plain speech," he said instead. "I find I prefer it to flattery." She did not know then that he had chosen her not for her plain speech at all, though that was true enough, but for a mended coat and a boiled kettle of coltsfoot, and the particular way she had refused to be thanked for either. She did not know that he had stood in the rain outside an almshouse and watched her be exactly what she was when she believed no one of consequence could see her, and had decided in the space of that watching that whatever else she might be, she was not a woman who performed her own goodness for an audience. She did not know any of it. She only knew that he was watching her now, waiting, his face giving away nothing at all, and that she had 4 days to decide whether to sell the rest of her life to a stranger with tired eyes. She took the 4 days. She did not sleep through most of them. Mrs. Pell, the housekeeper at Wexford Hall, was the one who told her, on the morning she came to give her answer, that she ought not to be afraid of the man, only of the silences he kept. "He's not cruel," the older woman said, folding linens with hands that moved faster than her words. "He's careful. There's a difference, though it took me the better part of 10 years to learn it. He wants a child, not a wife." "He wants an heir," Mrs. Pell agreed. "What he wants and what he'll get are not always the same thing in this house. I'd know. I've watched him long enough." Edith signed the contract on a grey Tuesday in a solicitor's office 3 streets from the church, where the following week she was married in a ceremony that lasted less than 10 minutes and drew no crowd at all. The Duke did not smile at his own wedding. He did not touch her, save to place a ring on a finger that trembled, though she willed it not to, and he noticed the trembling, and said nothing about it, and that, too, she did not know how to read. She moved into Wexford Hall with 1 trunk, and the coat with the crooked blue stitches folded on top of it, for she had gone back to the almshouse the day before her wedding and taken it from Tam's Hook, meaning to mend it properly with better wool now that she could afford some, and never quite managed to give it back before he outgrew it. It sat in her new rooms like a small blue confession she did not know how to make sense of. A scrap of the life she had left behind, kept for no reason she could name. The house was larger than any building she had ever stood inside. It was also, she came to understand within the first week, colder than her cottage had ever been, for all its fires and its silk-hung rooms, because the coldness in Wexford Hall did not come from the weather. It came from Lady Augusta Renner, the Duke's aunt, who had run the household since his mother's death and meant to go on running it, and who looked at Edith across the dinner table on her first night with an expression Edith had seen before, on the faces of women who priced a person's worth by the cut of her sleeve. So, Lady Augusta said, setting down her fork with a precision that made the silence after it louder than the words before it. The laundress. "Aunt," the Duke said. One word. A warning. "I only observe," Lady Augusta said, and smiled, a small practised thing, 3 beats and gone, like a bell struck once and stilled by hand. One is permitted to observe one's own dinner table. Edith did not answer her. She had learned young that some remarks were traps built to be walked into, and she had trained herself. Over years of being poor, in a village that never let her forget it, not to walk into them. She ate her soup. Her hand did not shake, though it wanted to. Across the table, the Duke watched her not answer, and something in his face, some line at the corner of his mouth that was not quite a smile, eased for a moment before it closed again. That was how the winter went, in small, silent tests she did not know she was passing. He gave her the running of the still room, and watched, without seeming to watch, how she treated the maids who worked under her, whether she gave orders the way his aunt gave them, sharp and without eyes, or whether she thanked a girl for a well-scrubbed floor, as if the girl were a person and not a pair of hands. She always thanked them. She could not seem to help it. He found her one evening in the stable yard, sleeves pushed up, setting a groom's dislocated shoulder back into its socket with 2 clean. Decisive movements while the man swore and then, astonished, stopped swearing. "You've done that before," Gideon said, from the doorway, where he had been standing longer than she realised. "My mother taught me. Bones aren't so different from bridges. Everything wants to go back where it belongs, if you're not afraid to make it." He looked at her for a long moment, the way he looked at ledgers when a column did not add the way he expected. Most women would have sent for the surgeon. Most women didn't grow up watching their mother set half the county's bones, because the surgeon charged more than a labourer earns in a week. She wiped her hands on her apron. "I'm not most women, Your Grace." "No," he said, "I am beginning to understand that you are not." He did not tell her, that night or any night soon after, that the coal delivered anonymously to the almshouse every fortnight came from his own purse, arranged through a solicitor who had been sworn, on pain of dismissal, never to name him. He did not tell her that Tam Ellery had been quietly moved to better lodging within the almshouse walls, warmer, nearer the kitchen fire, at the order of a benefactor who had asked, specifically, not to be thanked. He kept his goodness the way he kept everything else, folded small and out of sight, and Edith, not knowing to look for it, saw only a man of few words and fewer smiles, arrogant in his silences, careful in his distance, and she told herself, lying awake in a bed too grand for a laundress, that a bargain was still only a bargain, however kindly its terms had been arranged. She did not know then that every week that passed, the Duke of Wexford watched her a little more closely than a man watches a woman who is only carrying his heir, and liked, despite every intention he had brought into their arrangement, what he found. By March, Edith knew she was with child, and told him so across the same table where his aunt had first called her the laundress, in a voice she kept steady by force of will. He set down his glass very carefully. "You're certain?" "Doctor, Whitlow confirms it." He did not smile. He rarely smiled. But he was quiet in a different way than his usual quiet, and later, alone in his study, Mrs. Pell would tell Edith he had sat a long while without touching the letters on his desk, staring at nothing, his hands loosely folded, wearing an expression the housekeeper had not seen on him since before his mother died. Lady Augusta took the news less kindly. "How convenient," she said, the following evening, when the 2 women were briefly alone in the corridor outside the drawing-room, Gideon detained by his steward over some matter of the eastern fields. a girl plucked from a washtub, and within 3 months breeding, one almost admires the efficiency of it. I don't know what you mean to imply, my lady. I imply nothing. I have simply learned, in my years in this house, that women in your position understand very well what is required of them, and go about securing it with more calculation than they let on. Lady Augusta's eyes moved down Edith's plain grey dress and back up again, slow, deliberate, cataloguing. You've done well for a girl with red hands and no name. I wonder if you'll do half so well when the child is born, and my nephew remembers what you are. I have never forgotten what I am, Edith said. I don't require reminding, my lady, least of all from you. She walked away before her voice could betray her further. Her hands, folded at her waist, were steady. It cost her something to keep them that way, but she had trained herself long ago not to let cruelty show its mark on her, not where it could be seen, not where it could be used against her twice. She did not tell Gideon what his aunt had said. She told herself it did not matter, that words from a bitter old woman could not touch what she had built for herself, brick by red-knuckled brick, out of nothing at all. But that night, alone, she pressed a hand flat against the small, still secret swell beneath her ribs, and for the first time since the wedding, she let herself cry where no one could see it. Quiet, controlled, 3 tears and no more, because that was the only kind of crying she allowed herself, the kind that left no mark by morning. 2 mornings later, coming down early for a walk in the garden before the house woke, she found Gideon already there, standing at the edge of the frost-silvered lawn with his hands behind his back, looking at nothing in particular the way he did when something troubled him that he had no intention of naming. "You're awake early, your Grace." "I sleep little," he said. "It is a family failing." He glanced at her, and something in his face shifted, some calculation she could not read. "My aunt spoke to you 2 nights past." She said nothing. That in itself was an answer, and they both understood it as one. "She will not speak to you that way again," he said. Flat, final, not a promise offered for her comfort, but a fact stated as though it were already accomplished. "I don't need defending, your Grace." "I did not say you did." He looked at her fully then, the tired brown of his eyes steady on her face, in a way that made her want to look away, and did not let her. "I said, she will not do it again. There is a difference between defending a woman who cannot defend herself and refusing to permit cruelty at my own table. I find I have less patience for the second than I once believed." She did not know what to say to that, so she said nothing, and they stood together a moment in the cold garden, the frost cracking faintly under a bird somewhere in the hedge, a single rook calling once and going silent. It was not warmth, exactly what passed between them in that silence. But it was not nothing, either, and both of them, in their separate and private ways, understood that something had shifted since the wedding, some hairline crack in the wall of the bargain they had built, through which something unbargained for had begun, very quietly, to seep. Spring came late that year, and with it came the dinner that Lady Augusta had been waiting all winter to give. It was a small gathering, a dozen of the county's better families, invited under the pretence of welcoming the new Duchess to society, though Edith understood within the first quarter hour that welcome was not what had been intended. She sat at the foot of the table in a gown that had been made for her by the estate's seamstress. Fine wool dyed a deep, quiet blue, and she felt, in it, more like herself in costume than herself at all. "Tell me, Duchess," Lady Augusta said. Over the second course, her voice pitched to carry the length of the table. Is it true you once took in washing for the vicar's household? I understand you've a talent for getting stains out of linen. Such a useful skill. One almost regrets you've no need of it now. A ripple of laughter went round the table. Careful, well-bred. The kind that could be denied as cruelty if challenged. I did, Edith said, calm, her hands steady around her wine-glass. I was glad of the work. Not every household paid on time, but the vicar always did, and always with a kind word besides. I learned a good deal about people doing that work, my lady. More, I think, than some learn in a lifetime of dinners like this one. How charming! And what did you learn? That fine manners cost nothing, Edith said, and are given away far too cheaply by some, and that kindness costs everything, and is given away far too rarely by the same people. She set down her glass. I learned the difference. I've never forgotten it. The table had gone quiet. Somewhere down its length, a gentleman coughed into his napkin to cover something that was not entirely a cough. Lady Augusta's smile thinned to a line. You forget yourself. No, my lady. I remember myself very well. It's you who seem to have forgotten who I am, and who you are, and that a title bought neither of us our character. We were each of us born with whatever we've got, and raised whatever we grew into after. Gideon, at the head of the table, had not spoken through any of it, but when his aunt opened her mouth to answer, sharp and rising, he set down his own glass with a small, precise sound, and the sound alone silenced her more thoroughly than any words would have. That is enough, he said. 2 words. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. My wife is not a subject for the entertainment of this table, and will not be made one again in my house. The dinner ended early. Edith did not weep, not there, not on the stairs, not in the corridor where Mrs. Pell found her afterward, and took her arm without a word and walked her the rest of the way to her rooms. She did not weep until she was alone, and even then, only the 3 quiet tears she allowed herself, controlled, brief, gone before they could leave a mark. But something in her had cracked that night, quietly, the way ice cracks under weight it has borne all winter without complaint. She had held herself very carefully since the day she signed that contract, telling herself it was a bargain and nothing more, that she owed the arrangement nothing beyond its terms. She had not let herself want more than that. She understood, lying awake long after the house had gone dark, that she had failed, somewhere in the quiet accumulation of winter mornings and stable yard conversations, and one small unspoken kindness at a dinner table, to keep that promise to herself. She had begun, against every instruction she had given her own heart, to want him to mean what he had said at that table, not as a bargain kept, as something else entirely. That frightened her more than his aunt's cruelty ever could. The weeks that followed were quiet, but it was not a restful quiet. Edith grew heavier with the child, and slower, and Dr. Whitlow visited twice a week now instead of once, his face carefully neutral, in the way physicians' faces go neutral when they are watching for something they have not yet decided to name aloud. She overheard the thing that broke her on a wet afternoon in May, standing outside the study door with a tray she had meant to carry in herself, because she had sent the girl who usually did it to sit with a sick mother in the village. The arrangement was never meant to be permanent, Your Grace, Lady Augusta was saying, low, urgent, the kind of voice used for a conversation meant to stay behind a closed door. You know that better than I do. A settlement, a child, and she is provided for elsewhere, as agreed. You cannot mean to keep her past the birth. Think what it will look like. Think what it will cost this family's name. I am aware of the terms of my own contract. Aunt, are you aware of your own heart, nephew, or has it gone as soft as your manners toward her? I have watched you these 6 months. I know what I have seen. A silence, long. Edith stood frozen in the corridor, the tray trembling very slightly in her hands, though she willed it still. What you have seen, Gideon said at last, is not your concern. It was not a denial. Edith heard that clearly enough, standing in the hall with her heart going too fast and too hard. But it was not a confirmation either, and to a woman already half convinced that she had been a fool to want anything beyond the bargain she had signed, the silence sounded exactly like an answer she had feared from the beginning. She set the tray down on the hall table, quietly, and walked away before either of them could open the door and find her there. She did not confront him. That was not her way, and besides, what would she have said? That she had overheard a private conversation and built a wound out of its silences. That she wanted more from a contract than a contract had ever promised to give. Instead, she began. In the quiet way she did everything, to prepare herself to leave once the child was born, as the terms had always said she might, as his aunt had made plain she was expected to. She wrote nothing down. She said nothing to Mrs. Pell, though the older woman watched her with a knowing sadness in the days that followed, as if she understood exactly what had passed behind that closed study door and grieved, in her own quiet way, that neither of the 2 people she cared for most in that house had the courage yet to say what needed saying. Edith went on with her days. She tended the still room. She sat with the maids. She wrote once a short letter to the almshouse matron asking after Tam, and was glad to hear the boy was well, growing, his cough long gone. She did not write that she had begun, in the privacy of her own heart, to say goodbye to a house and a man she had not meant to grow fond of at all. She was in the garden on the morning it happened, walking slowly among the last of the spring roses because Dr. Whitlow had told her walking was good for her, when the first pain took her low and hard and wrong, weeks before anyone had thought to expect it. Mrs. Pell found her on her knees in the gravel path, one hand braced against a stone bench, her face white and her breath coming short. The house came alive around her, in the way houses come alive around emergencies, footsteps and raised voices and doors flung open, and through all of it Edith held very still to the one thought that mattered, that the child must come safe, whatever else happened, whatever choices she had made or failed to make about her own foolish heart. Gideon came in from the eastern fields at a dead run, on a horse he had ridden half to ruin, and burst into the hall still in his mud-streaked coat, and Mrs. Pell, meeting him at the stairs, had never in 10 years seen his face so entirely undone. How bad, he said. Only that. He could not seem to manage more. Dr. Whitlow is with her. It's early. It's hard. Mrs. Pell put a hand on his arm, the housekeeper's authority overriding, for once, every rule of rank between them. You cannot go in, Your Grace. Not yet. He did not go in. He stood outside the door instead, through the long grey afternoon and into the evening, refusing every attempt to move him to a chair, to a fire, to a glass of anything at all. He stood with his back against the corridor wall, and his eyes fixed on a door he was forbidden to open, and somewhere in those hours, Mrs. Pell would say afterward, something in him broke open that had been sealed shut since the day a woman with a pretty laugh taught him that love could not be trusted. It was near midnight when the cry came, thin and furious and entirely alive, and the door opened at last, and Dr. Whitlow, exhausted, his sleeves rolled, and his hands still damp. Said only, "A daughter." "Both of them will do well. It was a near thing, Your Grace, but they will do well." Gideon went in. The room was warm after the cold corridor, lit low with a single lamp, smelling of blood and lavender water and, faintly, of the roses Edith had been walking among when the pain first took her. She lay propped against pillows gone grey with exhaustion, her hair loose and damp against her forehead, a small bundle held against her chest, and when she looked up and saw him standing in the doorway, she did not know what to say, and so she said nothing at all. He crossed the room slowly, as if the floor might give way beneath him, and knelt by the bed and looked down at the small red face of his daughter for a long, wordless moment. Then, quite without meaning to, quite without any warning to himself or to her, the Duke of Wexford began to weep. He did not sob. It was not loud. It was worse in its way for how quiet it was, tears sliding down a face that had not, by all accounts, wept since his mother's funeral 15 years before, his shoulders shaking with the effort of holding the rest of himself still. "Gideon," Edith said. His name, not his title, for the first time since she had known him. "What is it? What's wrong?" "Nothing," he said, and laughed, unsteady, and wiped at his face with the back of one hand like a man who did not know how to do this, and was ashamed of not knowing. "Nothing is wrong. I thought, for a moment today, that I would lose you both, and I understood, standing outside that door, that I could not have borne it, and I understood something else besides. Something I have been too great a coward to say to you for months. Say it now," she said. Quiet, steady, though her heart was not. "I did not choose you for a contract," he said. "I chose you before I ever wrote a word of it. I saw you, months before I ever spoke to you, mending a beggar boy's coat in an almshouse window with wool you could not spare, and refusing to be thanked for it, and I thought, that is the only test that tells the truth, not birth, not fortune. What a person does for someone who can give them nothing back, when they believe no one of consequence is watching. You did not know I was there. You did not know how to be anything but yourself. That is why I chose you, and that is why, God forgive me for the coward I have been about it, I have come to love you since. More than I ever meant to, more than any contract asked of either of us." Edith was silent a long moment, the child asleep now against her chest, her own tears finally coming, not the 3 controlled drops she permitted herself in private, but real ones, unashamed. "I heard you and your aunt," she said, "in the study. Weeks ago. I thought you meant to send me away once the child was born. I meant to release you," he said, "if that was what you wanted, because I would rather have your no, freely given, than a yes you felt bound by contract to give me. I never wanted a wife who stayed because she was owed a settlement. I wanted one who stayed because she chose to, knowing she was free not to." He took her hand, the one not curled around their daughter, and pressed it, careful of its red, work-roughened knuckles, to his mouth. "You are free now, Edith. The child is born. The contract is fulfilled by its own terms. You may take the settlement and go, and I will not stop you, and I will not think less of you for it, though it will undo me to watch you leave, and if I choose to stay, then stay for no reason but that you wish to," he said, "not for the child, not for the money, for nothing but the plain fact of wanting to. That is the only choice I want from you. I will not press for any other." She looked at him a long while, this grave, arrogant, careful man who had wept over their daughter and confessed his cowardice in the same quarter hour, and she thought of everything she had told herself in the garden. Every careful preparation to leave with her dignity intact and her heart untouched, and she understood that it had already, months ago, been touched beyond any mending she could do herself. "I never wanted the money," she said. "I want to be asked plainly, and never lied to, and never made to feel I must be grateful for being loved. Can you give me that?" "I can," he said. "I swear it." "Then yes," she said. "It's the only word I need to give you." He kissed her hand again, bare fingers laced through hers, and for a long while neither of them said anything more, because nothing more needed saying, and their daughter slept on between them, indifferent to the whole of it, which was, in its way, the truest blessing the room could have held. Lady Augusta left Wexford Hall within the month, for a cousin's house in Bath, and did not return, though a stiff, dutiful letter arrived from her each Christmas, which Gideon read and Edith did not ask about, and which, in time, grew slightly less stiff, though never warm. Mrs. Pell stayed on, of course, and grew over the following year into something closer to family than staff, the first to hold the new Duchess's daughter, and the first to weep unashamed at the sight of the family the two of them had built out of a bargain neither had expected to survive their own hearts. Tam Ellery came to live at Wexford Hall that autumn, apprenticed to the head groom at the Duchess's quiet insistence, and grew into a tall, steady boy who never did learn to call her anything but Mrs. Hale, out of some private loyalty to the woman who had mended his coat before she was anyone's Duchess at all, and she never once corrected him for it. A year later, on an evening much like the one that had first brought them together, cold and rain-smelling and wood-smoked, Gideon and Edith sat together by the nursery fire, their daughter asleep at last in her cradle, his hand around hers, bare fingers laced, and did not let go. On a hook by the door, where it had hung since the day Edith moved into the house and never once thought to put away, was a small blue coat, patched at the collar with crooked, careful stitches, kept for no reason either of them could name aloud, though both of them understood it perfectly well. A person's worth is proven only in the moment they believe themselves unwatched, and true love, when it comes, asks nothing more of a heart than the plain truth it was already carrying.